So, the inevitable's happened. Erik Ten Hag has been sacked by Manchester United. I can't say I was surprised when I woke up this morning and was lying on my sofa, ill, when I got the text to say that he'd gone. He'd been given the chop. He'd been sacked. He'd been booted out. We've been woeful so far this season. We were woeful last season too. We had some excuses last season with all of the injuries, but this season, you can't really say there's been too many excuses. Personally, I'd like to have seen him stay and maybe just try and work out what it is he needs to do to get this team firing. We just couldn't score goals. That was the issue. We couldn't score goals. Anyway, before I get into that, here's Gary Neville's brutal opinion about Erik Ten Hag's sacking at Manchester United.
I thought it was, unfortunately, I thought it was coming. Looking at that game against Tottenham a few weeks ago was the sort of game where I felt, I've seen this before and know how it ends. It was a really bad day, obviously, for United, but a bad day for Erik Ten Hag. And it was one that I think shocked everybody. I think that was sort of the game where everyone felt that the season would start to kick on and he potentially could recover from this difficult start, but it's got worse. And yesterday, obviously, missing chances in the first half was unacceptable. I mean, there were 3 or 4 times where United should have scored and should have been 2-0 up at half-time. Then the decision at the end, obviously, is a bad one. But overall, I just think the challenges of the results, the challenges of the performance levels have meant that the owners have decided to sack Erik Ten Hag. And I don't think anybody will be truly shocked this morning after what happened yesterday.
So, yeah, Erik Ten Hag. I liked Erik, but he was his own worst enemy, unfortunately. He was too stubborn trying to play the way that he likes to play, in the sense of playing that tippy-tappy kind of high-press, possession-based Man City style football. It didn't suit the players that he had. It certainly didn't suit the forward players that he had. Because I've said this on videos time and time again, so I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record. But the attacking players, the wingers specifically, they need to be good at close control and they need to be very creative because they need to open up defences on the low block who are tight-knit. So they can pass to the centre forward and score goals themselves. But Rashford and Garnacho are not good enough to play that style. However, they are more than good enough to play counter-attacking football. And if Erik Ten Hag had just played the way that he played in his first season, and he played on the counter, utilising the strengths of Marcus Rashford and Garnacho and Højlund, because Højlund's rapid as well, and if he just prioritised results over style, he would still be in the job.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing, Gary. Do you think that despite the performance in the FA Cup final against Manchester City, that the end of last season would have and should have been the time to do this?
I mean, there'll definitely be now those that said that it should have happened will be feeling that they're proved right. However, you know, being one of the sort of probably many hundreds of thousands, millions of United fans who wanted to continue with Erik Ten Hag and thought that if you don't get a replacement that's at this moment in time, you know, standout replacement, give him an opportunity to succeed under a new structure with another transfer window with hopefully some good signings. I think the big shock for me is just how bad they've been with the new signings that have come in. I felt as though that they would have enough to be able to get a decent level of performance together, and that the smoother transfer window, the fact that Erik Ten Hag with some stability, and the fact that in 14th is just unacceptable. You can't be in 14th after nearly 9-10 games, really, with the level of spend that's occurred without being under significant pressure, and that's what's happened. I was hoping it would end differently. I think Manchester United fans were hoping that the manager would continue to keep his job and that the faith that was shown him in the summer would pay off, but it's just not been the case.
I'm sick to death of this manager merry-go-round. I really am, because it's going to be the same again. Someone will get 2 years and then players will down tools or something will happen and then they're going to get sacked and they'll get someone else in. Oh, hey, same old, same old. I actually I respected Ineos for sticking to the guns with Erik Ten Hag, and they weren't going to get relegated. They're not that bad. but we just couldn't score goals.
Gary, it's Stephen Warnock here. You've obviously been involved with Salford and you've had to make the decisions yourself before to sack managers. When you do that, have you already made the process clear as to who you want to approach that manager to make sure it's in place? Or do you just think this has got to the point where it's just been untenable for Ten Hag?
I suspect that Tottenham game a few weeks ago would have been a catalyst for them to start to think already about a new manager. It just felt that day like a day where you would start to look at your options. And being in that position, what you do, you look at who's available, obviously as part of the process of being an owner and being diligent, particularly the sporting department. And then you try and think of the timing. And ordinarily, you believe it or not, in our position, and I don't know whether United have done it, they said you're half hoping that the manager can just turn it round and that they can get results and something miraculous happens and that basically you can start to win matches. But the fact of the matter is, 99 times out of 100, I suspect, when you've made a decision, you feel as though the sort of, the tide's against you, it just continues to go against you. And I think they've probably chosen a moment that maybe was decided a few weeks ago that, the next big bad loss or bad result, we're probably going to have to act, and that's come yesterday. So, yeah, they will, I think, have started, definitely, I would imagine, the process of finding Erik Ten Hag's successor, because that Tottenham game a few weeks ago did feel like the end, even though it wasn't the end on that particular day.
Anyway, there's nothing wrong with that squad. That squad has got some very good players in it. Ugarte is a player, De Ligt's a player, the goalkeeper started to play well, Rashford's a good player when he wants to be, if you utilise his strengths as a player. Same with Rashford, and Højlund is good too. Bruno's world class. But I don't know, they just felt stifled. They weren't used to their strengths. And it's a shame, really, because Erik Ten Hag, he is a good coach.
You could come up with a cocktail of reasons or issues with Manchester United, Gary. From your perspective, what was more concerning, the club's recruitment or Erik Ten Hag's tactics over a long period of time?
I think the lack of identity and style is something that's been a mystery for the last 2.5 seasons, really, because even with, let's say that the recruitment's been poor, which I don't think it's always been the best at United by a long stretch. It's been awful at times, but I do believe that there are a group of players there who can play a lot better than they are, and you can put an identity into them. I mean, yesterday I was shocked to see Eriksen and Casemiro in central midfield and Ugarte on the bench. Ugarte was brought in as being the sort of successor to Casemiro, and obviously, he's not started brilliantly for him. But I think things like that, if I was an owner looking at that, I would think, well, hang on a minute, these two in midfield obviously are getting on in age, and you've got a lad that's been brought in 40 million quid who basically's got legs. I would be asking questions around that as an owner, and I think the lack of style of play has been the biggest problem, and the lack of progression in the performance levels. It's a real struggle watching United play, and that's not changed really for the last 18 months, and that's been, I think, in the end, as big a problem as the results.
But it looks like we're going to get Amorim from Sporting, who plays 3 at the back. Okay, 39-year-old, someone who's younger than the big D, even though he looks 25 years older, especially now that I've had a shave. I don't fancy Xavi. Certainly don't want Gareth Southgate. Oh, it's just one of those, isn't it?
Just on the point about identity then, Gary, the statement says that Ruud van Nistelrooy is in interim charge, helped by the current coaching team. Ruud has been a manager, Ruud. Do you think he is able to quickly get an identity into these players?
I mean, it'd be almost impossible, wouldn't it, for him to do that in the next few days. I can't think that he's going to have. I mean, what's he going to be able to do? I mean, he can set the team up. He can set the team up differently. I mean, that's something that could happen. He could make the makeup of the team slightly different. But I mean, he's been on the bench with Erik Ten Hag, so I'd be amazed if there was something drastic happened in the next few days in the games that he's got to manage. I think that ultimately there needs to be quite a lot of work done with those players, because at this moment in time they're desperately struggling. And, Erik Ten Hag's not been able to get a consistent level of performance out of them. And a lot of those players now are his players. He was backed in the summer. And that ultimately, I think, is a big factor in this. So, Ruud van Nistelrooy will do his very best. I have thought for a number of months that looking at the players that United have, they may be better suited to going 3 at the back. Just purely because of the lack of a centre-back pairing, and the full-backs, to be fair, look better going forward than they do defensively. So maybe that could happen. Maybe that might give them a little bit of more comfort, because it would give them an extra body at the back, but also get the players into a system whereby they've got more support. And that's something I've thought for a few months, but whether Ruud does that and whether that's the right way to go, I'm not sure. It's ultimately at this moment in time something that we'll see, against Leicester on Wednesday night, whether he believed in what Erik was doing, because he'll pick a different team if he didn't.
Anyway, what do you guys think? Should he have been sacked? Should he have stayed? What can we do moving forward to climb that table and start getting results? Comments in the comment section, please.